Okay, so like I said, I will make sure that I put a list at the bottom of these modules to make sure that you just write it in your journal. You don't need anything fancy. You don't need, a guide or anything like that. Everything I did was just with a journal and a pen, and I wrote stuff out. So I will make sure that you have a list of the things that you want to bring awareness to. Another thing that we're going to start to bring awareness to is noticing your triggers. What are some of the things that are actually triggering you? Because it can be something so minute that you don't even realize what kind of impact it's creating for you, what's making you feel out of control. So triggers are emotional signals that activate old patterns. So somebody comes to me and they say something that's incredibly critical of me because as a child I was judged and criticized a lot. That immediately triggers me to go into isolation, because when I was a child I didn't feel like anybody heard me or understood what I was experiencing. They didn't really want to hear it. They thought I was being too sensitive or too emotional, so I would isolate myself into my bedroom. This is something I still do. However, I used my isolation to help me grow and change. So instead of going into isolation and ruminating over what I was experiencing and how I was feeling, I started going into isolation and educating myself, learning about myself, doing self-discovery, diving into my shadow, understanding my gifts. So when these things start to happen, yes, we're identifying them right now, but over a period of time, we're going to start shifting it so that we actually use those moments where you feel triggered, and instead of going into an older pattern where you isolate and you ruminate, you're actually going to start to use it for the betterment of you. You're actually going to start to grow and change, and you're going to become more resilient, which is the main focus. Some of the things that might trigger you are when you have a situation where people cause you to react instead of communicating how you truly feel. Another one is feeling rejected or abandoned, not feeling good enough, or conflict and confrontation. I'm a non-confrontational person. And so I will avoid saying the things that I really need to speak up and say because I don't want to get in a fight, because I don't like it the way that it feels in my body. My dad was a yeller, and when my parents would argue in the home, it triggered my nervous system. Or if I heard my brother get in trouble in the next room, even though I wasn't the one that was getting in trouble, it still affected how I reacted in my nervous system. So being aware of those little things, and you don't have to talk about them right away. I just want you, let's say you get into a conversation with your spouse or your friend or your parent, and it gets kind of confrontational. I want you to pay attention to how you're not speaking up for yourself, or I want you to pay attention to what it's triggering inside of you. Because a lot of times when you're getting in a confrontation with somebody, it's not necessarily about that moment. Sometimes it is triggering an emotion that you felt as a child. And that's why we're going to dive a little deeper into our mother and father wounds and really identifying the things that happened in your childhood, the root of it, what it triggered, what kind of patterns and coping mechanisms you developed over time with those. So again, I'll write those out and you can make sure that you have a list. All right. Another one is going to be lack of control or uncertainty, feeling unseen, unheard, or unappreciated. This is going to resonate with a lot of you because a lot of you are a lot like me. That's probably why you watch my page. I have felt unseen, unheard my entire life. And it was usually at the hands of the people that I love the most. And so that is what I find that a lot of people are really struggling with, is they're living in an environment around maybe family members that make them feel like they're not worthy of being heard or seen. And I know how painful that can be, but again, that is the reason why we have this community. You're going to be surrounded by people who have also experienced this, and it's going to make you feel like you're worthy of being heard and seen, because that's what we're here for. We're here to support each other. So the exercise is going to be tracing your patterns, observing reactions. Next time you get triggered, I want you to pause. I want you to ask yourself what you're feeling, what's coming up for you, where are you feeling it in your body, what are you trying to avoid or escape from? Those are the questions that you're going to be asking yourself. These will be listed for you so that you can remember. You're also going to be identifying the pattern that you create, because everything is a pattern. We're human beings. We are that's what we do, is we create patterns constantly. And we want to make sure that we are actually shifting from a negative pattern to a positive pattern, recreating a new one. And then another question you're going to want to ask is, when is the first time I felt this way? So we're really going to be diving into a lot of the childhood stuff. And I know that this can trigger a lot of guilt and shame. And this is where some really powerful work happens. And, again, I wouldn't necessarily go and talk to other people about it, because if they have never experienced it, they're not going to be able to relate. And that is what we are here for, so that we can talk about things that make us uncomfortable that stem from childhood. We're also going to have some journal prompts that are going to be really good for you guys, so that you can kind of maybe trigger some things in you, not in a negative way, but just trigger some ideas of, I never thought about this, or that's a really good idea. That's really going to help me wrap my head around maybe something that happened in the past. So we're going to have some journal prompts as well. So I want to remind you of this before we close out this module, and that is, when you break a cycle, the pattern actually loses its power when you recognize it in the moment. And this was something that was a huge shift for me, because when you go from living a life on autopilot and you're doing things that you're not even realizing, and then you decide to take the next step and bring awareness to it, all of a sudden it loses its power. And this is really profound, and you're going to notice it when you start to bring these to awareness. Now, also, instead of reacting, we're going to pause and reflect. So let's say in the next couple of weeks, somebody says something to you and it's incredibly triggering. I know this is difficult. I know how hard it is not to react when you are in a lot of pain, but we want to take the time to pause and reflect, whether you have to walk outside. I find that going and putting my feet in the grass, if I can get to it, I'm usually at home anyway, but if something happens and I get triggered and somebody hurts my feelings, the first thing that I do is I would either go in my room and grab my journal. I will stop and put my hand over my heart, because we're really trying to bring all of the energy that's up in your head, because you're ruminating and you're thinking too much. We want to pull that down and put it into our heart, and we want to ask ourselves how we're feeling. And that's going to help you get an idea of what we're trying to do in this moment when we get triggered. Is we want to choose something different. Instead of choosing what we normally would have done, go into isolation, cope with an addictive pattern, go shopping, use a substance. We want to shift this pattern in this moment. So the moment that you get triggered and you put your hand over your heart, this is really profound, and it's really going to help you, because you're giving yourself the space to choose differently. And that's what we're trying to do. Also, making sure that you don't numb, because again, when we choose a substance that numbs us, we're not allowed to tap into that emotion. We're actually, something's coming up. I've been triggered. I'm really bothered right now. I'm really upset. I'm really emotional. I'm going to go take something that's going to numb me out. Those emotions are going to go away. And what we want to do is allow them to come up. Yes, you're going to feel uncomfortable. Yes, it's going to feel for a moment like you're out of control, but taking a deep breath, closing your eyes, putting your hand over your heart, telling yourself that you're safe. You are with yourself. And you are the safest place. And that's what we're trying to create, is feeling safe in our own body again. So make sure you're not numbing out. Make sure that if somebody is overstepping your boundaries and you feel like you're having to people please to keep them happy, that we set firm boundaries. And remember, boundaries are not for the other person. Boundaries are for you, to make sure that they aren't forcing you to do something that you're uncomfortable with. So setting boundaries was really difficult for me as well. We're going to talk more about this when we get into the module when it comes to manipulative and toxic relationships. So we'll talk more about it. But right now, again, we're just bringing awareness to it so that we can choose differently. Let's see. Instead of avoiding, we're going to face the discomfort. Again, that's, putting your hand over your heart and making sure that you realize that you're safe in your own body. So these are just some of the things that we're going to do. Small shifts over time create transformation, and I cannot say this enough. You're going to think that you're not doing a whole lot, but These are just small shifts that are gradual and structured so that it's not chaotic and all over the place. And over time, as we